8.6. The first thing we're going to look at, we are solving rational equations, but the first type, method 1, is when you have a proportion. Does anybody remember what's a proportion?
Small part of it?
What's a proportion? We did this back in Algebra 1. Remember, you cross-multiplied in a proportion, but what was a proportion?
Oh.
Where
X over 6 equals like two numbers over each other and you solve for the X.
we call those fractions, yeah, where you have one fraction equals one fraction.
Yeah.
That's a proportion. Okay, this is a proportion, but let me give you a non-example so that we're clear. If I said to you, I have A over B plus C equals D over E, that one's not a proportion because I don't have one fraction on the left side. Okay, so in order for method 1 to work, it has to be a proportion. Then step 2, determine the domain. And determine the domain, make sure you factor each denominator. Okay, factor each denominator before you do the domain. You cross multiply, solve the resulting equation, and you check for extraneous solutions. So, in example 1, I have a proportion because I have one fraction equals one fraction. Step 2 says determine the domain. All right, let's pause here a moment. What is domain?
All possible x.
All possible x values. In a fraction, what do we have to be concerned with?
It not equal 0.
Good. The denominator can't be 0. So my domain would be all real numbers except negative 1. And if I set 4x plus 5 equal to 0, subtract 5, divide by 4, it's negative 5/4. Step 3 says cross multiply. You did that in Algebra 1, and then solve the resulting equation. Well, this one's a simple equation with one variable. So I can subtract 9x from both sides, and I can subtract 15, and I get x equals negative 2. Step 5 says check for extraneous solutions. What that means is you go back to the domain. If this had been x can't be negative 2, I couldn't have x as negative 2. But the only two values that give me a problem are negative 1 and negative 5/4. But you have to check. So this one's okay.
If it would have been x doesn't equal negative 2, would it have been just no solution?
Yes. Good job. Yes. And we're going to see one of those today. All right, method 2. What if it's not a proportion? Step 1, determine the domain. Again, put down factor each denominator if you need to. Find the LCD. Now you have to have factored the denominators first, okay? Find the LCD, multiply both sides of the equation by the LCD, solve the resulting equation, and check for extraneous solutions. So it's very, very similar. And someone asked me in the other class period, they said, well, what if we don't like this LCD method? Can you take, like in example 2, the left side, add them first and make it a proportion? One fraction equals one fraction? Yes, you can. But you have to get it down to one fraction. Okay, so that is certainly an option. So here we go. Step 1, determine the domain. X can't be 0. What's the LCD here?
X plus
4
4.
times x. It's not x plus 4. There's no x plus 4 in the denominator. Now, step 3 says multiply by the LCD. So watch what we're going to do. I'm going to go through and multiply every term by the LCD. And I'm allowed to do this because of the multiplication property for equations that we learned in Algebra 1. Where if I multiply the left side, I have to multiply the right side. So my x's cancel. 4 times 5 is 20. The 4's cancel and I get 7 times x. The x's cancel and I get negative 36. Well, this is a nice, simple equation that we know how to solve. I subtract 20 from both sides and I get 7x equals negative 56. X is negative 8. The last thing you need to do is check your domain to make sure you don't have any extraneous solutions. X can't be 0, so x equals negative 8 is okay. Alright, let's try example 3. Step 1, determine the domain. Alright, who wants to try domain this time? Noah?
That x can't equal 5.
What else, though?
Oh, and 0.
Yeah, x can't be 5 and x can't be 0. Alright, step 2, determine the LCD. So Hannah, what's the LCD on this one?
X minus 5.
Good job. And remember guys, LCD is a product. It's x times the x minus 5. So now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply every term by the LCD. When you start getting more comfortable with this, you can mentally multiply and do that without showing the steps. So right here, I just get x times x minus 5, because 1 times the x. Here, the x minus 5 cancels, and I get 8x. Here, the x cancels, and remember we talked about this in the previous lesson. X minus 5 times 3 is equal to 3 times x minus 5, because that's the commutative property. I'm allowed to do that. Now what I want you to notice here before I move on, when you multiply by the LCD, it gets rid of all the denominators. And that was the point. I don't know how to solve an equation with a fraction, but I know how to solve it if I get rid of the fraction. Okay? So now let's solve this resulting equation. I get x squared minus 5x minus 8x equals 3x minus 15. Be careful to use the distributive property. I'm going to collect like terms. Then let's bring everything on one side equal to 0. This is a quadratic equation, and we know how to solve quadratic equations. And this one worked out pretty nicely. It's x minus 15, x minus 1. So x is 15 or x is 1. Be careful, check your domain. They're both allowable. All right, any questions on these first two? I personally prefer LCD method, but I could do the multiplication in my head and cancel, and then it's not so bad. All right, let's try example 4, then I'll let you try the next one on your own. On this one, do you notice x squared minus 9 is not factored? So remember when I said find the domain, you have to make sure your denominators are factored. That's going to help us with domain, and it's going to help us with the LCD. In the previous class, they said the LCD was x minus 3x plus 3x squared minus 9, which is not true. So let's start off with the domain. Jaslyn, what's the domain here?
Wouldn't it be x cannot be 3 or negative 3?
Good, and we can write that as x can't be plus or minus 3. And then McKenna, what would be the LCD on this one?
X plus 3 and x minus 3.
Good. Do you notice I don't need it twice? It's just x plus 3, x minus 3. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show one more time the multiplying it out, and then on the next one I'm going to skip it and do it in my head. So this takes up a lot of room. Okay, so I'm going to cross out the x minus 3, and that leaves me with x times the x plus 3. Notice x plus 3, x minus 3 cancels, and I just have 8x squared. The x plus 3 cancels. Oops. And I get minus, and I'm going to put the 4x in front. Okay, do you guys notice how I just did the canceling? So this is 6x plus 18 equals 8x squared minus 4x squared plus 12x. And then I'm going to bring everything over to the x squared side. What's the first step in factoring? Okay, look for the GCF. There is a GCF of 2. Okay, because of time, I'm going to zoom forward with the correct factoring. Now, the zero factor property says you set each factor that contains a variable equal to 0. So I'm not going to do anything with this 2 out front because I technically could divide both sides by 2 and it just disappears. So I'm getting x equals 3 halves or x equals negative 3. But if I look back at my domain, x cannot have a value of negative 3. So the only answer is x equals 3 halves. Bless you. Alright, so what I want you to do is I want you guys to try example 5. Try to go through the whole setup by yourself. Now tomorrow we're going to have a mini quiz on this. You'll have one that's a proportion and 2 that are set up for LCD method. If you don't like LCD, you'll have to add and get a common denominator. Now, do you guys understand what that 7? It's like 7 over 1. On this one, I'm going to mentally multiply. If I multiply by x minus 2, it cancels in the first fraction, but I don't cancel anything with the 7. So it's 7 times x minus 2, and then with the 10, the x minus 2 cancels. So I'm getting x equals 2, but x can't be 2. So this is the situation Elena asked about. That means it's no solution. Alright, any questions on example 5? Alright, try example 6 on your own. Remember to determine the domain, and sometimes you have to factor denominators and sometimes you don't. Find the LCD, multiply by the LCD to eliminate the denominators. If you'd like, you can try to get a common denominator on that left side and make it a proportion. If you like that, you can do that. So the domain, x can't be -4 or 1. The LCD is x plus 4 times x minus 1. I'm going to let you keep working just to make sure we're on the right track. Now remember on this middle one here, you can't multiply 3 things at once. Nor do you take 4 times x plus 4 and 4 times x minus 1. That's not the distributive property here. It's 4 times something times something. So you just group 2 at a time. A lot of algebra on this one. Now it's quadratic, so remember we try to get everything on one side equal to 0 and we try to factor it first. If for some reason it wouldn't factor, we use quadratic formula. Don't think, oh, you just can't do it. We have another strategy. So I'm getting x is negative. Whoops, did I have the signs wrong? What's wrong here? Am I on the right one? Oh no, I'm right.
It's the
Okay.
right one, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking at the wrong problem on my paper. Alright, then check your domain. Both of those are okay.